My family's $1 million inheritance turned into a nightmare when we discovered Dad's secret double life. The courtroom revelation will leave you speechless. My father died, leaving behind what we thought was a simple will. But the family secret that emerged during the inheritance battle destroyed everything we believed about our lives. I never thought I'd be the guy posting about family drama on Reddit. But here I am, 6 months after the most devastating court case of my life, and I still can't wrap my head around what happened. My dad passed away last year after a sudden heart attack. He was 68, had been retired for 3 years, and seemed to be enjoying life with my mom after 45 years of marriage. They had that kind of relationship everyone envies, still holding hands, still laughing at each other's jokes, still planning trips together. Or so I thought. When Dad died, we all assumed the inheritance would be straightforward. He had always been very organized about his finances, and he'd mentioned having a will that split everything equally between my mom, my sister Jenny, and me. We're talking about roughly $1 million in assets, the house, his retirement accounts, some investments, and his life insurance policy. My mom was devastated by his death, obviously, but at least she wouldn't have to worry about money. Dad had worked his entire life as an engineer and had been incredibly smart about saving and investing. The house was paid off, and there was enough money for Mom to live comfortably for the rest of her life. The reading of the will was supposed to be a formality. We all gathered at Dad's lawyer's office: Mom, Jenny, me, and my brother-in-law Mark. The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, had been Dad's attorney for over 20 years, so we figured he'd just confirm what we already knew. Instead, he dropped a bomb that changed everything. "Your father left 2 wills," Mr. Peterson said, looking uncomfortable. "The first will, dated 5 years ago, leaves everything to be split equally among his wife and children, as you expected. However, there's a second will, dated just 6 months before his death, that supersedes the first one." My stomach dropped. Mom went pale. Jenny grabbed Mark's hand. "What does the second will say?" I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "The second will leaves the house and $50,000 to your mother, $50,000 to each of you children, and the remaining $800,000 to someone named Rebecca Martinez and her 2 children, Sophia and Miguel Martinez." The silence in that room was deafening. None of us had ever heard of Rebecca Martinez or her children. Mom looked like she was going to faint. Jenny started crying immediately. "There has to be some mistake," I said. "Who is Rebecca Martinez? Why would Dad leave almost everything to strangers?" Mr. Peterson looked even more uncomfortable. "I'm afraid I can only share what's in the will itself. Your father included a letter to be read to the family, which might provide some context. The letter was worse than the will. In his own handwriting, Dad explained that Rebecca Martinez had been his partner for the past 15 years. Not just a girlfriend, his partner. They had been living together part-time, and her 2 children, Sophia and Miguel, were his children too. My dad had a second family. For 15 years, while he was married to my mom, while he was being the perfect husband and father, he had been living a double life. Rebecca worked as a nurse and lived about an hour away from our town. Dad had told her that he was divorced and that his ex-wife and children were estranged from him. Sophia was 14 and Miguel was 12. According to Dad's letter, he had been supporting them financially and emotionally since they were born. He considered them his true family and felt guilty about not being able to acknowledge them publicly because of his complicated situation with us. The letter said he hoped we would understand and accept Rebecca and the kids as family, and that he was leaving them the bulk of his estate because they needed it more than we did. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. My entire childhood, every family memory, every moment I thought my parents had a perfect marriage, it was all built on lies. Mom was catatonic. She just stared at the letter while Jenny read it out loud. And when Jenny finished, Mom stood up and walked out of the office without saying a word. That was the beginning of the worst 6 months of my life. Jenny and I immediately hired a lawyer to contest the will. We weren't just angry about the money. We were angry about the betrayal, the lies, the fact that our father had been living a lie for 15 years and then tried to make us pay for it after his death. Our lawyer explained that contesting the will wouldn't be easy. Dad was mentally competent when he wrote it. It was properly witnessed and notarized, and there was clear evidence that he had been supporting Rebecca and her children for years. The financial records showed regular transfers to Rebecca's account, payments for the kids' school expenses, even a college fund he'd started for Sophia. But we had to try. This wasn't just about money. It was about justice. How could Dad lie to our family for 15 years and then reward the people he lied with us for by giving them our inheritance? The legal discovery process was brutal. We had to go through Dad's financial records, his phone records, his email accounts, everything. Each new piece of evidence felt like another knife in the back. Dad had been incredibly careful about hiding his double life. He had a separate phone, a separate email account, even a separate bank account that he used for his relationship with Rebecca. He told us he was going on business trips or visiting old friends, but he was actually spending weekends with his other family. The most devastating discovery was a photo album we found in his office safe. It was full of pictures of Dad with Rebecca and her kids, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations. He looked happy in these photos. Genuinely, completely happy in a way that I realized he never looked in our family photos. Mom had a complete breakdown when she saw the album. She's been in therapy ever since, trying to process the fact that her entire marriage was a lie. But the real shock came when we actually met Rebecca Martinez during the court proceedings. She had no idea we existed either. Rebecca thought our dad was divorced and that his ex-wife and kids wanted nothing to do with him. She had been encouraging him for years to try to reconnect with his estranged children, not knowing that we saw him every week for family dinners. When Rebecca found out the truth during the legal proceedings, she was as devastated as we were. She realized that the man she loved and trusted had been lying to her just as much as he'd been lying to us. Sophia and Miguel, Dad's other kids, were completely traumatized by the whole situation. They had just lost the only father they'd ever known, and now they were learning that he'd been lying to them their entire lives too. The court case became a media circus. A local newspaper picked up the story about the inheritance battle, and it went viral on social media. Everyone had opinions about who deserved the money and whether Dad's secret family should be punished for his lies. People were brutal in the comments. Some said Rebecca was a homewrecker who destroyed our family and didn't deserve a penny. Others said she and her kids were innocent victims who had been lied to just like us and deserved the inheritance Dad had promised them. The hate was overwhelming. Rebecca started getting death threats. Her kids were bullied at school. She had to take time off work because reporters kept showing up at the hospital where she worked. I felt terrible about that. Whatever my feelings about the inheritance, Rebecca and her kids didn't deserve to be harassed. They were victims in this mess, just like we were. The court case lasted 4 months. Our lawyers argued that Dad's will was the result of his guilt and shame over his double life, and that he was essentially trying to buy forgiveness from Rebecca by leaving her everything. They said the unequal distribution was so extreme that it suggested Dad wasn't thinking clearly when he wrote the second will. Rebecca's lawyers argued that Dad had been supporting her and her children for years and that they had relied on his promises of financial security. They said it would be unfair to punish Rebecca and her kids for Dad's lies, especially since they had no idea about our family. The judge's decision was complicated but fair. He ruled that the second will was valid and that Dad had the right to leave his money to whoever he wanted. But he also ruled that the way Dad had obtained the money, by lying to both families about his financial obligations, created an unfair situation. The final ruling split the inheritance more evenly. Mom got the house plus $200,000. Jenny and I each got $150,000. Rebecca got $300,000. And Sophia and Miguel each got $100,000 to be held in trust until they turned 18. Nobody was completely happy with the decision, but everyone agreed it was more fair than Dad's original will. But the money was only part of the story. The real damage was to our families and our relationships. Mom ended up selling the house because every room reminded her of Dad's lies. She moved to a smaller place across town and is slowly rebuilding her life. She's made it clear that she never wants to see or speak to Rebecca or her kids, which I understand but also think is sad. Jenny had a really hard time processing everything. She had always been Daddy's little girl, and learning that he'd had another daughter who he was equally devoted to destroyed her sense of identity. She's been in therapy and is doing better now, but she still gets emotional whenever Dad comes up in conversation. As for me, I've been trying to figure out how to remember my father. Was he a good dad to me? Yes, absolutely. Was he a terrible husband to my mom? Also yes. Was he a good father to Sophia and Miguel? From what I can tell, yes. Was he a liar who hurt everyone he claimed to love? Definitely. The strangest part of this whole experience has been getting to know Rebecca and her kids. After the court case ended, Rebecca reached out to me to apologize for the pain her relationship with Dad had caused our family. She insisted that she never would have gotten involved with him if she'd known he was married. I believe her. Rebecca seems like a genuinely good person who got caught up in Dad's web of lies, just like the rest of us. She's been as traumatized by this whole experience as we have. Sophia and Miguel are good kids too. Sophia looks exactly like Jenny did at that age, which was jarring at first. Miguel has Dad's eyes and his love of baseball. In another universe, where Dad had been honest about his situation, maybe we could have been a blended family. But Dad chose lies instead of honesty, and now we're all dealing with the consequences. The most infuriating part is that this whole mess could have been avoided if Dad had just been honest. If he hadn't been happy in his marriage with Mom, he could have gotten divorced. If he wanted to be with Rebecca, he could have married her. If he wanted to support her kids, he could have done it openly. Instead, he chose to lie to everyone and let us all find out the truth after he was dead and couldn't explain himself or face the consequences of his actions. Rebecca and I have stayed in touch sporadically. She sends me updates about Sophia and Miguel sometimes, and I've sent her some photos of Dad from when Jenny and I were kids. It's weird and sad and complicated, but I think it's important for the kids to know about their father's other life, even if it's painful. Sophia is doing well in school and wants to be a doctor like the father she thought she knew. Miguel is struggling more with the revelation about Dad's lies, but he's getting counseling and seems to be improving. Jenny wants nothing to do with Rebecca or her kids, which I understand but disagree with. These kids didn't choose to be born into Dad's web of lies, and they lost their father too. The inheritance money has been distributed, and we've all moved on with our lives as much as possible. Mom is dating someone new, which shocked everyone but makes me happy. She deserves to find love with someone who will be honest with her. Jenny and Mark are trying to have kids of their own, and Jenny has said that she wants to be the kind of parent who never lies to her children about anything important. As for me, I'm getting married next year to my girlfriend of 3 years. This whole experience has made me value honesty and communication in relationships more than I ever did before. I never want to put anyone through what Dad put all of us through. The legal fees ended up costing all of us a significant portion of our inheritance, which is ironically fitting. Dad's lies literally cost everyone money in the end. I still think about Dad a lot and try to reconcile the father I knew with the man who was capable of living such an elaborate lie for so many years. I've come to the conclusion that people are complicated and that someone can be both a good parent and a terrible spouse, both a loving father and a selfish liar. The inheritance battle officially ended 8 months ago, but the emotional fallout is still ongoing. Mom still can't talk about Dad without getting angry. Jenny still cries sometimes when she looks at old family photos. Rebecca still feels guilty about unknowingly being part of the destruction of our family. The kids are probably handling it better than any of the adults, which says something about resilience and the ability to move forward. I've learned that family secrets have a way of coming out eventually, and when they do, they destroy everything in their path. I've also learned that money makes everything more complicated and that inheritance battles bring out the worst in people. But I've also learned that it's possible to find some kind of peace and understanding even in the most painful situations. Rebecca and her kids didn't deserve to be punished for Dad's lies, and neither did we. The judge's decision to split the inheritance more evenly was the closest thing to justice we were going to get. Would I rather have my dad back and no inheritance at all? Absolutely. Would I rather have learned about his double life while he was still alive so he could explain himself and face the consequences? Definitely. But since neither of those things is possible, I'm trying to focus on moving forward and building honest relationships with the people in my life. The $1 million inheritance that was supposed to be our father's final gift to his family ended up being the thing that revealed his biggest betrayal. But in a weird way, I'm glad we found out the truth, even though it was painful. Living with lies, even comfortable ones, isn't really living at all. Dad's legacy isn't the money he left behind. It's the lesson that honesty and integrity matter more than anything else, even when the truth is hard. I just wish he had learned that lesson while he was still alive.